Hi, everyone. My name is Teslin, and I'm the Director of Communications and Stakeholder Relations for the Home Construction Regulatory Authority, or the HCRA for short. On behalf of the team at the HCRA, thank you for joining us today as our CEO and Registrar, Wendy Moyer, and our Deputy Registrar as well, Mark Spector, takes us through an overview of the HCRA and how we support consumers in their home buying journey. We also encourage you to submit any questions you may have through the Q&A function here in Zoom, just at the bottom, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. If we're not able to get to your question during our time together this evening, not to worry, we will directly email you with a response. And for everybody's reference, the session today is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available, as well as posted on our website. And with that, the HCRA would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on, and to take a moment to recognize the importance of each of the lands we call home. At the HCRA, we do this to reaffirm our commitment to inclusion and belonging, as well as improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. As we are hosting this webinar from our offices in Toronto, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So once again, thank you for joining us, and I will pass it over to you now, Wendy.
Great, thanks so much, Tess, and hello, everyone. Let me start by thanking you for being with us on this beautiful evening. As Tess mentioned, today's information session is for new home buyers and owners, and also prospective new home buyers. And yes, Mark and I are going to present you some information, but there's also going to be lots of time for your questions afterwards. So we're really looking forward to engaging with you. Now, at the HCRA, we understand that buying a new home can be complex and one of the most important decisions you can make in your life. Consumers are our most important stakeholders, and we want to help you with that journey. Whether it's a licensing application, answering our customer service line, or updating our website, our consumers are always top of mind in the work that we do. We want to provide you with information and resources so you can make informed decisions. And that includes what to expect from your builder, how to stay protected, and what to do if you have a concern. We also want you to have confidence in Ontario's home building industry, which is constantly evolving. And our top priority is protecting the public. So I'm happy to be here with you today. And I'm also joined, as Tess mentioned, by our Deputy Registrar, Mark Spector, who will discuss how you can bring concerns forward to the HCRA. This is one of our first webinars for consumers, and we plan to hold more of these sessions in the future so that we can continue to support you. With that in mind, I want to take a few moments to talk about the HCRA, specifically who we are and what we do. The HCRA is one of the province's newest regulators, and we are responsible for licensing the people and the companies that build and sell new homes in Ontario. Not only do we support good builders by requiring builder competency and overall financial viability, we, of course, protect consumers on the home buying journey so that they can make informed decisions. Just like dentists and nurses have their own regulatory bodies to protect the public, the HCRA holds builders and sellers to professional standards to support the goal of a continuously improving home building industry in Ontario. And to be clear, we don't just issue a license to anyone. They need to demonstrate that they have technical, management, and financial know-how to do the job right. And we also work to ensure licensed builders and sellers treat new home buyers ethically and fairly and prevent bad actors from operating in the marketplace to protect consumers as well. The HCRA was designated by the Government of Ontario in 2021 to administer and enforce the New Home Construction Licensing Act and associated regulations. And the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery continues to be responsible for the Licensing Act, as well as the general oversight of the HCRA. So specifically what we do, in addition to licensing, the HCRA enforces a code of ethics for builders and addresses professional conduct and competency complaints. We also host the Ontario Builder Directory, which is an online database of information about each of Ontario's 7,000 builders and sellers. And when you go to that builder directory, you can find a builder's licensing status, the number of years they've been active, the number of homes that they have built, and any conduct concerns, including charges or convictions against the builder. And for anyone looking to purchase a new home, I really strongly encourage you to check the builder directory to ensure the builder you're considering working with is licensed with the HCRA. And to be certain, having a license with the HCRA, it isn't just an option, it is the law, and we take that very seriously. We also know that there's been some confusion about the roles of the HCRA and Tarion, who administers Ontario's new home warranty program. So you'll see on the slide here, we have those roles side by side. Now, historically, builders and sellers were licensed and regulated by Tarion. However, after an independent review, the Government of Ontario decided to create a new and separate regulator, that's us, the HCRA, to license new home builders and sellers in the province. And today, the HCRA licenses and enforces professional standards for builders, while Tarion continues to deliver Ontario's new home warranty and protection program for new homes. Tarion is also responsible for resolving disputes between builders and homeowners on warranty-related matters. So as an analogy, just like a driver's license shows you have to meet certain standards to safely operate a vehicle, the HCRA holds licensed builders to professional standards. And while Tarion, like insurance for your car, provides home owners with backstop for the warranty against construction defects after possession. Tarion also collects and provides the project and warranty-related data you'll find on the builder directory and is responsible for that accuracy. The HCRA is working to enhance the builder directory with more user-friendly language and easy-to-understand terms and definitions to provide better consumer awareness. Based on consumer feedback, we understand that there is a need to provide better understanding between the roles of the HCRA and Tarion and the different ways that we can support consumers. Now, moving on to the Code of Ethics, which the HCRA also enforces, and we use this to address professional conduct and competency complaints. The Code of Ethics sets out 20 expectations of good conduct. This includes demonstrating to the HCRA that builders have the competency and skills to build and sell new homes before a license is issued. Builders are also required to apply annually to renew their license. And what we'll find is that their past record is also an important part of the HCRA's licensing review process. For example, a builder can't change their corporate name and license number to reapply and get a license from the HCRA. We review everyone who may be associated with their application and their licensing history as part of our licensing process. This would include whether they have currently or previously been registered with Tarion prior to 2021 or licensed with the HCRA after 2021. So as consumers, what kind of behavior should you expect from your builder? You should expect them to treat you with fairness, honesty, and integrity, not engage in discrimination, harassment, or bullying, not engage in or being a party to misrepresentation. They should provide you with a level of courteous, communicative, and responsive service, and follow the rules and regulations of the industry, including proper licensing, following the Ontario Building Code and related legislation. So these are just a few of the 20 sections of the Code of Ethic that you can see. So, for example, if your builder wanted to change the purchase price of your new home, they need to clearly communicate this type of proposed change in a timely manner, as well as giving you an opportunity to seek legal advice. It would be unethical for your builder to not communicate this type of change, limiting your ability to seek legal advice or amend your purchase agreement without your consent. The HCRA would consider this professional misconduct, and as consumers, you should never be misled into thinking there's no choice but to accept a builder's new terms. And for the record, violating the code is considered professional misconduct, and the HCRA can take certain actions to protect consumers and deter this kind of behavior. This might include mandating training and education courses, imposing financial penalties, laying charges, or suspending or revoking a builder's license entirely. The HCRA has used all of those tools. At the same time, our goal is to bring builders into compliance, not to simply punish them. Our goal is to improve the industry. But in some cases, of course, these types of actions, they are required to protect new home buyers. Builders are also not allowed to prevent home buyers from making a complaint. In fact, it's your right as a consumer to bring any concerns forward to the HCRA as the regulator. And to discuss our complaints in more detail, I'd like to pass it on to our Deputy Registrar, Mark.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate this opportunity to have a dialogue with you. So as Wendy mentioned just a few moments ago, you as consumers, you have the right to expect professional and ethical behavior from your builder. You have that right. And that's exactly what happens for the most part. We've learned in our 3 years of experience that most new home buyers, they're actually satisfied with their builder and the building process of their home, and that most builders actually have a very good relationship with their customers. We found that they generally operate ethically and generally operate within the rules. But we've also learned in the last 3 years that not everyone does, and that there's always exceptions, and we're here to address those types of concerns. Now, I just need to take a moment to acknowledge something. We know that historically, our complaints process, it's been a challenging area for the HCRA. When we first opened our doors 3 years ago, we didn't really know how many complaints we would receive, and we received quite a few. So our responses were slower, and it was an area that represented the biggest backlog that we had at the HCRA. That was 3 years ago, and this is now. And I can tell you that we have a much bigger team now. We have better insights, we have a lived experience, and we have a more streamlined process. In other words, we're much better at what we do. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more in a moment. But maybe all of this begs the question. We've got a nice slide that says complaints. Well, how do we even become aware of concerns? And frankly, it's a partnership. We rely on reports from the public, from the industry, from building officials that help us identify builders who act unethically and outside the law. In fact, the number one source of complaints comes from you, the consumer. And it's really clear, you don't have to be personally impacted either. Anyone can submit a complaint through our website. For example, a neighbor, or you see something and then you say something and we will look into it. And you might wonder, all right, what happens after I submit this complaint? What do you do with that? And actually, the answer to that is we do a number of things. We do. First, we need to assess whether the concern falls within the HCRA's jurisdiction, or does it need to be referred to somebody else? Or is more investigation required? All of this does take some time. Um, and every complaint is unique. And we want to make sure that for every unique case, we have the right resources and to figure out the right path forward. In any event, what you can expect from us, regardless of your concern or your complaint, you can expect an immediate acknowledgement right away that we got your complaint. You can expect that. You can also expect that we're going to reach out to you personally, whether it's email or a phone call, within 3 to 5 business days to have a conversation, to see if there's any more information that is required, to let you know that we're here and we're following up. And all this may sound a little bit theoretical, and I'm going to tell some real life stories about cases that we've addressed that might help flesh some of this out. And the first case I want to talk about is a matter called hybrid construction. You may have heard about this. It was in the media, it was covered by CBC News, and then it spread across the country and all of the daily newspapers. And the gist is this. Hybrid suddenly closed down, it skipped town, and it wasn't responding to anybody it owed money to. And they obviously had no intention of returning homeowner deposits or paying the trades to complete the work on all these half-built homes. So what do? Well, we immediately froze all of Highbridge's assets. We also immediately suspended its license, and eventually we revoked it entirely. And this is one obvious, I'll say extreme example, but with serious consequences that shows the HCRA's determination to act against builders who fail to live up to their legal and ethical obligations. Just one example. But this next example is actually one of my very favorites. After receiving a tip, the HCRA conducted an investigation and learned about a builder who had built 8 homes illegally. And we sent them a very, and I mean very strongly worded warning letter with potential repercussions if they didn't attempt to become a legitimate builder by getting a license from us. And not just getting a license from us, but enrolling those 8 homes with Terrian to make it right. We really scared them. And the impact of that is that once rogue builder, well, they applied to the HCRA. They eventually got a license and they enrolled those 8 homes. And today, I can tell you that we have eyes on that builder. That's what compliance looks like. And it all started with a warning letter. But we're not naive. Sometimes we know that it takes more than just a warning letter to get compliance. And that was the case of another illegal builder who, after getting one of those warning letters from us, they kept advising themselves as builders on social media. They just didn't care. They didn't want to be regulated. They didn't want to be governed. So what do we do next? Well, we issued a compliance order, an order compelling them to respond. The problem is that didn't work either. So we recently laid charges against them for not only illegal building, but also for failing to comply with that compliance order. And I can tell you that next court appearance is happening very, very soon. So those are just a few what I'll call higher profile examples that you might have heard in the news. But I want to share with you one that you may not have heard of. It didn't get the same attention, even though its impact on protecting consumers is just as important. And this example started off as 4 complaints against a builder who failed to return grading deposits of about $1,000. And by the time that those complaints had reached out to the HCRA, they had been waiting nearly 3 years for the return of that deposit. 3 years. But after a few phone calls from us, and between the builder and the municipality, the HCRA was able to break that impasse with the builder. They immediately returned those $1,000 deposits, but not just to those 4 complainants who reached out to the HCRA, for the entire subdivision, for the entire community, they got their deposit. So that's just one example of how just because the HCRA closes a file without taking a formal action, without a press release, without it being covered by the news, it doesn't mean that we aren't doing something to help consumers, to really help them. So this is a great outcome. I've been waiting for many years, and they got justice, and that's very gratifying.
Thanks, Mark, for sharing these examples. And I want to reiterate, the reason we're sharing these examples with you is to let you know that making a complaint, if you have a concern, can be very effective, and that we are here for you to review those complaints and do what we can to protect consumers on a whole range of matters, as you've seen here. And I want to add that also that we understand the urgency homeowners feel when they submit a complaint, and we are committed to responding to 100% of the complaints that we receive. But please do keep in mind, as Mark said, it's a rigorous process. We need to get more information, gather any relevant documents, and speak to everyone involved. And we need time to get it right. We need to spend that time. The point is that everyone has the opportunity to contribute, provide context, and be heard. It's crucial, and we do that with all of the complaints. At the same time, complaints do need to be prioritized, with the most serious matters coming first. So we ask questions like, is this an isolated event or part of a pattern of behavior? How many purchasers or homeowners are potentially affected? How vulnerable is the consumer, and what's the impact on them? And is it time sensitive? That's an important one as well. Further, has the builder engaged with the purchaser and tried to make things right, or have they gone silent? There have been cases where we've made the decision to take no further action, only to receive new information and reopen the case and pursue investigations. We certainly always encourage anyone with information to come forward and share their concerns with us, and we will always evaluate the information we receive. We also take the information we receive into consideration when reviewing license applications to ensure only qualified applicants will be issued a valid license. So that information will be on the builder's file. And most important, we're dedicated to a full impartial review and want to hear all sides to better understand the situation and determine the right outcome. Tess, over to you.
Wendy and Mark. And I know everybody, we just shared a lot of details about, what we do and our complaints process. And we really can't stress enough that, we are really here to help consumers throughout their home buying journey. And, our role is to protect new home buyers, to ensure that ultimately you have the information and also the resources you need to be able to make an informed decision. And so with that, we have allotted some time now to address any questions you may have for us. And so everybody online with us today should have access to that Q&A function that I mentioned earlier. And if you want us to go ahead now, is a good time to submit your questions. And just a friendly reminder, we're not going to be able to address specific questions on any specific cases. So please keep your questions in a general manner. Anyone interested on learning more information on specific files, we're always happy to chat with us offline. And so with that, I'll give everybody a moment to submit any questions they may have while I peek into any questions that we've already received. Here we go. Oh, I see one. And the question is, when is the HCRA going to simplify the addendum and make it more consumer protective?
I can take that question, Tess. Yeah, so we're engaging, continuing to engage with the government to look at the addenda and review the addenda. The addenda, it's the Tarion addenda. We don't own the Tarion addenda. The government is actually responsible for making any changes. That has to be done by regulation, so by cabinet to any changes. But certainly we're very familiar with it. We host it on our website. Our licensees are required to use it, as well as the information sheets for condos. And certainly through the complaints process itself, we see how it is being used frequently. So we're very interested in continuing that conversation with government to help, I think, clarify parts of the addenda.
Thanks so much, Wendy. That was helpful. We have a question and maybe Wendy, maybe you can clarify. The question is the HCRA a regulatory organization for new condo construction?
Yes, absolutely. We regulate the builders who build the new condos. So it's really any new homes, not renovated homes, unless the renovation is so large that it's actually a new home. And we have an advisory on our website that talks about what is a new home. And under the legislation, if it's a new home, we regulate it. And new condos are definitely considered new homes. So we have lots of condo builders on the Ontario Builder Directory and lots of enrolled homes.
Thank you. This next question that I'm seeing is what proactive enforcement methods do you have for builders to get licensed? Do you require them to enroll with Tarion? Do we communicate with Tarion about the QFE requirements?
Maybe,
Yeah, why don't you go,
yeah.
Mark? Go ahead.
The one thing that's really important to recognize is the process always starts with the HCRA. You need a license from us to engage, to be a builder or a seller. And having a license with us has to happen before anything with Tarion, QFE, or enrollment. So that's the floor. The other part of that question, I'm really glad that you asked it, on the proactivity piece. And the short answer is yes, we work with all kinds of stakeholders. So not only consumers like you, but building officials, inspectors, including Tarion, to identify challenges early on.
And maybe if I can just add to that as well, just to clarify, yeah, we do actually, we do enforcement actions both for lack of licensing and for lack of enrollment through Tarion. So we are responsible for enforcement of both those pieces.
That's right.
Just moving on, and we have another question on why is it that it's the responsibility of the home buyer to ensure that the builders they hire are licensed and are following the rules? Isn't this the HCRA's job?
Well, it's definitely the HCRA's job, no doubt about it. However, consumer protection does involve everyone working together if it's to work the best. And that's one of the reasons it's so important for us, why we're here today, why it's so important for us to help you have the information so that you can also help protect yourself. And certainly in terms of checking to see if your builder is licensed, for example, on the Ontario Builder Directory, and letting us know if you see that something's awry, if somebody's not licensed, or if you have a concern about your builder's competency or whether they're acting ethically. We can't be everywhere all at once, so it's really helpful when we have members of the public let us know so that we can do our job and follow up. Anything to add there, Mark?
Oh, I thought that was perfect.
Oh, thank you.
And so, oh, I see that somebody is just noting that they were joining a little bit late. And so the question is, where do we go to submit a complaint? You know, I think is on our website. So I think I can actually answer that. Yes. We have an online forum on our website, hcraontario.ca, and there's a lot of information about essentially the process of complaints, and it's actually all online. And I don't know if Mark, you have anything to add on how easy it is to fill out a complaint and the process that maybe one can expect after they've submitted a complaint and what happens afterwards.
Yeah, and to whoever who asked this question, thank you for asking it because it's a really, really important one, part of the very basis of why we exist. So we do have a wonderful platform on our website and complaint forms that does set out the process, but just a high level on this call, there are on our website, there's actually two kinds of complaint forms. So one, if you have a builder and you're concerned about their conduct, you think they may have been acting unethically, there's a complaint form for that. And there's another complaint form if you think this builder is a rogue. They are an unlawful, an illegal builder, and I have a suspicion, I don't see them on the HCRA Ontario Builder Directory. They're probably illegal, and there's another complaint for that. In both situations, we've designed our complaints process to be the minimum amount of information required from consumers. Just enough to alert us to the concern, and then we'll reach out to you for more information. And speaking about more information, I had mentioned before that once you do that, you can expect a receipt 24 hours, that acknowledgement. We've got you. Thank you for submitting a complaint to the HCRA. And then you're going to hear from us, whether it's a phone call or an email within 3 to 5 business days, so that we can have a conversation and begin a dialogue. Bottom line, we're here to walk you through the entire process, and we're here for you.
Thank you, Mark. And the next question we have is, how often does Tarion send the HCRA information on the builder's performance records, such as failure to fix defects that are under warranty? And how do we know that they're communicating this information to us?
Sorry, how does the HCRA know we're
Yes,
communicating it?
yes.
So we have a data sharing agreement with Tarion for warranty related data. Which we're actually working on having that data updated more often. It's sort of every few weeks at the moment, but we're actually working on going to have it updated every 24 hours, which we think will be great and really helpful for consumers. So watch for that improved service. And of course, because our systems interact, that we know when it's that information is downloaded.
The follow-up question, what has the HCRA done to improve the OBD?
Well, we've done a few things. I guess in the last year, it's an ongoing. We're all about continuous improvement at the HCRA. So we've done quite a few things since doors opened in 21. But just in the last year, one of the things we were very pleased to improve was clarifying the relationships between companies. So, for example, some companies, they will do all of their business under one company and one license, but quite frequently, I think for, tax purposes, accounting purposes, some of the bigger companies, they actually open new companies every time they have a new project. So you see this, especially with like condo developers. And for every corporation, they then have to have a new license. So it can be pretty confusing as a user of the Ontario Builder Directory, at least in the past, to see what the relationship between those companies were. These companies are basically the same people, right? They're the same owners, they're the same principals of the companies. So if you're dealing with one company, you want to know whether the other company has had any conduct complaints against it, or how many homes it's built, how many issues it's had with warranty. So we made some changes to the OBD just this last year, so that you can see how companies are related, and much easier to see the information about them and how they, what do they look like on the whole. We're also, I guess, we're also continuing to work on enhancing definitions. There's still definitions in there that are a little hard to understand, particularly as some of the warranty related definitions. So we're still working with Tarion to see if we can clarify those definitions for you as well.
We have a question on does the HCRA regulate a condo builder where the final product maybe does not match the expectation? So for example, maybe there was something advertised in a brochure, and when it's time to close that, you know, there are certain elements that may have not been as advertised.
That sounds like a possible concern about misrepresentation. So maybe Mark, you want to take that one?
That's exactly what I was going to say, Wendy. You heard earlier on about the 20 principles in the Code of Ethics. And one of them is about misrepresenting a product. An advertising for one thing, but getting something completely different or substantially different. That is something that we would be concerned about. And we've had real life cases on this very topic, and we have taken action.
Our next question is, the builder can terminate the APS without cause in accordance with section 6G in the addendum. What can a purchaser do to protect themselves?
Without having the addendum right in front of me, there are a number of early termination conditions, I think the question is about. And some of those early termination conditions can definitely be quite broad. But what I would say, and those are the definitions that we're interested in looking at. But what I would say is that it's really important for any purchaser to get legal advice and really fully understand what the risks are before you buy a new home. And that includes looking at the addenda, how the APS is filled out, how it relates back to the particular addendum, and understanding what the builder might do and what the purchaser needs to do to protect themselves. A lawyer should be able to help with that.
Our next question is kind of going back to the OBD, the Ontario Builder Directory. And the question is, are there any penalties to Tarion for providing HCRA with inaccurate data for the OBD?
The HCRA, of course, does not regulate Tarion. Tarion is an independent administrative authority, as is the HCRA. And the overseer of both the HCRA and Tarion is the Ministry of Business and Public Service Delivery. So obviously, just like the HCRA has to answer for our performance, the Tarion also answers for its performance to the ministry. I mean, as far as the information itself, obviously we've heard, concerns about data at the HCRA. We received the information from Tarion. I know there is a process where you can sometimes consumers and builders, if they see Tarion data that they think is inaccurate, they simply contact Tarion directly.
going back to complaints, if a complaint is lodged, does the HCRA visit the worksite to investigate?
So thanks for asking that. And the short answer, I have a law degree. Wendy does too. You're going to hear this. The answer is always it depends. You heard us, both Wendy and myself, talk about every case is on its individual merits. Sometimes the answer is absolutely yes. When it makes sense, when it makes sense to talk to people, it'll move the file forward. But that's not the case in every single matter. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And while we're talking about complaints, can I just follow up on a previous answer that I gave? We heard from that wonderful question about false advertising, concerns about misrepresentation. If to that person who asked the question, if that has happened to you, you believe that that's happened to you, I would love to hear from you. Please reach out to the HCRA. Please submit either the complaint form or reach out on the info at. I'd like to have a conversation with you.
That's a good point, Mark. That's a very good point. I was wondering, so that last question about whether we go out on the job site, whether the question is related to defects in the home, because I think it is important to clarify that generally defects, if you've got a new home and there are defects, the process is the claim process through your builder and through Tarion. The HCRA doesn't duplicate those efforts that are being dealt with on the claim side. I mean, you can, where our interest comes in terms of building quality on your home, is whether or not your builder is actually competent to be building. It's the competency piece, and that's a bit broader than a specific defect in a specific home. And we certainly collect, and we have, as I've mentioned, we have data sharing with Tarion. So if there's like a history of poor customer service, for example, or it seems that a builder is having continual problems with defects in their home. I mean, it's normal to have defects in a home. That's why some defects, that's why warranty's in place, so that there's a process to fix them. But if it looks like it's a competency issue, then definitely that's where we would come in, and we would consider what that might mean to the builder's license. And we can do that through asking them to take a course, and we do that all the time to improve their. I mean, if they were really terrible, we could revoke. But generally, if it's something less severe than that, we would ask a builder to take a course if we see that kind of problem. But I just wanted to make it clear that we don't go on site to investigate defects per se. We can get that information in different ways. And I can see you're dying to say something, Mark. So go ahead.
No playing poker with you, Wendy. I really like that answer, and you're right. If that was the concern, we would never. But maybe moving away from a builder, a licensed builder, and their conduct concerns. But what about the illegal builder? And we often do go on the site to see what's going on. It's actually a home. Is it happening in progress? And we'll collect evidence that way. So it kind of depends on what we're talking
about. It does depend. You were right the first time.
A great point, Mark. Can we back it up a step? What is an illegal builder actually?
Can I take a stab at that one? Simply put, maybe oversimply put, an illegal builder is someone who should be having a license with the HCRA. It is a person or an entity that is building or selling a new home in Ontario, and under law, they need to have a license with the HCRA. Simple as that.
But it could also be somebody who is licensed but has not enrolled a home. That would also be illegal, right?
Absolutely. And now we have a question of illegal vending on top of that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that clarification. And actually, that is a perfect segue to our next question, talking about builders with, criminal offenses. So if a builder has been convicted of a criminal offense, for example, let's say fraud, do we list this kind of conviction on the builder directory?
Not unless it's part of one of our actions. So are we going to answer that, Mark?
Yeah, maybe I can start with what we can, because the legislation sets out what we're legally able to produce, to post on our builder directory and share publicly. And it's quite clear about what we can and cannot do. So sometimes we, the law sets that out for us.
Yeah, so for example, if we had refused a license because of the fraudulent conviction, and it was a notice of proposal that was posted publicly, which notices of proposals are, then you would see it there. Because
Thank you,
that's what,
Wendy.
as you said, that's what we're allowed to post, yes.
Exactly. The next question is, can builders just declare bankruptcy for a particular incorporation and get away with their respective projects?
Oh, well, that sounds like, I mean, there is a system for bankruptcy and receiverships. That's not something that the HCRA regulates, of course. But from the HCRA's perspective, we're very concerned when there are receiverships and bankruptcies, because that goes to their financial competency, which is one of our core competency pillars. So from our perspective, I would say no. They generally cannot get away with it. It's going to have an impact on their license or their future licenses, because that's one of the things we definitely look at every time we get a new license as well, is what is the history of bankruptcy and receiverships.
It's helpful, Wendy. And I see a question here, which is such a great question. So, throughout our session today, we've talked about essentially actions that we can take that once we receive a complaint. So the question is, what are some things that we are doing proactively to kind of ensure that, these bad things aren't happening? So maybe Wendy and Mark, you can speak to some of the education and advisories that, we have been doing to uphold the standards in the industry.
Yeah, maybe I can talk about some. We talk on the HCRA website, we have a bunch of advisories, and these are not just stale edicts that come from the heavens that don't have a place in reality. In fact, most of our advisories are based on real life lived experiences that we saw an opportunity to educate builders about their responsibilities, and consumers about their rights, and proactively deal with it that way, so that they can learn some very, very valuable lessons learned by other builders and other consumers. So that's one living, breathing thing that actually happens proactively. I can also tell you that we don't look at complaints in isolation. This is all part of a bigger regulatory system. So we also look at patterns. We look at connections, and you heard Wendy talk quite well earlier about our Ontario Building Directory and the importance of understanding interrelationship and names and entities, so that someone can't hide behind a veil or a pseudonym. So we're quite proactive in that regard as well. Those are just two examples.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're sort of moving more in the direction of, and that I'm quite excited about actually, is what data is out there, either out there or within our own system, that we can analyze and, even use some of the new AI tools to analyze in order to predict problems ahead of time and in a proactive manner. That's something that regulators are starting to do more and more, in addition to utilizing information they receive through the complaints process. So very interested in some of the opportunities there.
And our next question is, why do some builders still not obey the rules even after receiving multiple complaints against them?
So that's a pretty heavy question.
Well, one, can I suggest you might have to ask them, but two, I'm not sure that that's actually the case. In our experience, when we have progressive discipline and we've taken the greatest action that we can, usually revoking someone's license, taking them out of the entire profession. In most cases, that has worked and it's worked really well.
I think that's true. I think in most cases, it does, and it does deter people. There's always going to be a few outliers, and you see that in every area of our society that just will never obey the rules. But thankfully, we do have some very strong tools available to us, even our prosecutions. People can be fined, but they can also, somebody, the way our legal system works and our prosecutions work is that repeat offenders can end up with jail time, which is, that's a pretty big penalty. And with our new administrative penalties, those can be very large as well. I think the longer the HCRA is in existence and the more we do and the more we use these tools, the more it's going to be clear to people that they really do want to just live within the rules. But we are still relatively young, and some of those repeats haven't happened yet, but they will, and we'll be here waiting for them.
Yeah.
Said Wendy, well said. Our next question is, how often does the HCRA review the builder's financial strength after granting a license?
Maybe I can take on that question. So a license is required. A license only lasts a year. So there's an automatic review every single year. Every builder in Ontario has to do this on an annual basis. So there's always going to be a refresh and a look. And in between that, if we learn about concerns, we'll also look then as well. So it's at least, at most, it's going to be 12 months, and sometimes much shorter than that.
We have another question, a good question actually, and the question is, can a building permit be released by the local jurisdiction without confirmation of a registered builder?
The answer to that is yes. There are currently no provincial requirements for building permits to be restricted unless there is proof of licensing, I think was the question. Licensing and warranty. Although a lot of municipalities do ask for it. But it's not consistent across the board. So there's no sort of provincial requirement for that.
Thank you. And our next question, I'm just realizing we don't have that much time left, so this might be the last question or so.
What a lot of great questions though, Tess.
A lot of good questions, yeah. And I know some of you would have joined maybe later, and you might have missed it when I said, don't worry if we run out of time. We will get back to you. We do see the questions, but this has been really, really super engaging. So we thank you for your participation. So with that, possibly our last question for the evening is, Wendy, earlier you mentioned, we have and we do find builders. So the question is, does a buyer get any of the proceeds from these fines? Or do they just get their deposit back? That's the question.
So the administrative penalty system was set up to allow for what they call a monetary benefit penalty. So not only can we penalize a builder. We call it a base penalty just for it could be up to $50,000 per offense, sort of as a base penalty. But also there's a potentially unlimited amount that we could levy for what we call monetary benefit. So for example, if a builder does something that is against the code of ethics or something illegal, and they have benefited from that financially, usually on the backs of a consumer, we can actually penalize them for that amount, collect that amount, assuming it's appealed, we win the appeal and can collect the money and actually return that money to any affected consumers. So there are a number of cases like that actually underway right now. Anything to add to that, Mark?
Only that this is a really important tool in our toolkit, and it's designed to address the question, well, that's just the cost of doing business. And I assure you it's not. We have a remedy to address that.
Yeah, that's right. And in some cases, some of the cases that we're looking at, you know, the potential monetary benefit is in the millions of dollars.
Well, thanks so
Yeah, great
much.
question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I was really happy that, you know, we did have the time to speak about that with everybody today. But it looks like we are just out of time this evening. Again, if we didn't have a chance to answer your question, please do not worry. We will be sending you a response directly. And also, if you happen to have any additional questions after our session tonight, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at info@hcraontario.ca. I also wanted to mention, you know, after the session, we will be receiving an email where we invite you to share your feedback on how you felt today's webinar went. And also we encourage you to also submit any topics for future sessions that we can explore. You know, your feedback is really valuable and helpful to us. And as well, just to mention, a recording of the session will be shared with everyone and will be posted on our website as well. And with that, thanks again for joining us and have a good night, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.